Ever wonder what happens when a comic book decides to pick a fight with an absolute legend? Well, today, we're diving into a story that does exactly that. We're going to explore Kieran Gillen's Peter Cannon Thunderbolt and its incredibly bold conversation with the one and only Watchmen. But to really get what's going on here, we have to rewind a little bit, back to a question that, for over 30 years, has just loomed over the entire world of comics. A single question that pretty much changed everything.
Yup, that one. Who watches The Watchmen? And look, this isn't just some random line from a comic book, right? This is a cultural landmark. It marks the moment the entire superhero genre was kind of forced to look in the mirror and deal with its own dark reflection.
For years, that question felt unanswerable, like this rhetorical challenge just left hanging out there. But then, along comes writer Kieran Gillen and artist Caspar Wingard, and they're like, you know what? We'll watch The Watchmen. And what they found? Well, it's a total game changer. Now, before we get to their answer, we've got to talk about the question itself. We need to really understand the sheer size of the shadow cast by Watchmen. Okay, so for anyone who might not know, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen, it wasn't just another superhero book. No way. It was like a seismic event. It cast this massive shadow that completely reshaped the entire landscape of comics, proving these stories could be literary, complex, and honestly, deeply disturbing. And, like any huge shadow, it's really hard to get out from under it. For a whole generation of creators, Watchmen was just there, this constant hum in the background. It became this creative problem you either had to submit to or you had to actively, deliberately fight against. And that's where Peter Cannon Thunderbolt comes in. See, instead of running from that shadow or trying to ignore it, this comic does something really bold. It just turns right around and starts a direct, face-to-face conversation with the myth itself. So yeah, this 5-issue series is way more than a simple tribute. You could almost call it a meta-sequel. It's a comic that literally takes Watchmen apart, piece by piece. It's a deconstruction of the ultimate deconstruction.
So how do you even start a conversation with a giant like that? Well, Gillen and Weingard's approach is just genius. They start with the family tree.
They lay out this amazing multi-generational map of inspiration. It all kicks off with the original Charlton Comics heroes from back in the 60s. Then, those characters, they inspired the iconic cast of Watchmen. And now, Gillen comes in and completes the circle with his own characters creating this incredible regeneration story of influence. Just look at this. It's all laid out so clearly. It's like creative DNA. You've got the original Peter Cannon, who inspired the brilliant and frankly terrifying Ozymandias, and now Cannon's back to deal with that legacy. Captain Atom's atomic power gets turned into the godlike Dr. Manhattan, and now we see him reflected in this new character, Nucleon. The point isn't to hide your influences, it's to put them right out in the open for everyone to see and analyze. But here's the thing, Gillen's characters aren't just one-for-one copies. Oh no, they're this wild mix of influences from all over the superhero genre. The new Rorschach, the Test, he's got this chaotic Joker-like vibe. Supreme Justice is a mashup of the comedian and his original inspiration, the Peacemaker. And Pyrophorus, the Night Owl type, he's rocking a suit that looks suspiciously like Iron Man's. It's a commentary on the entire genre, all wrapped up in these characters. But honestly, the most brilliant, the most mind-blowing thing this series does, it goes way beyond just the characters. It starts to take apart the very language of comics itself, right down to the little boxes on the page. Okay, so to get this, we gotta talk about a concept called formalism. Basically, think of it as the grammar of a comic book, the way the panels and the layout tell the story. And for Watchmen, its signature, its whole identity is that rigid 9-panel grid. It's what gives the book that steady, rhythmic, almost claustrophobic feel. And this is where Peter Cannon just goes completely off the rails in the best way possible. It takes that 9-panel grid, which for Alan Moore was a storytelling tool, and turns it into an actual literal weapon inside the story itself. The grid isn't just for us, the readers, anymore. It's a real source of power for the characters. So how does that even work? It's wild. A character can literally draw a rectangle on a wall and boom, it becomes a portal to another universe. They can jump between panels to get around, and at one point, a bad guy literally rips a panel off the page and uses it as a shield. They are weaponizing the fundamental rules of their own reality. It's incredible. Okay, so they've taken apart the characters. They've taken apart the very structure of Watchmen. What's the endgame here? What is all of this deconstruction actually trying to build? Well, the series is making this really powerful point. To create something genuinely new, you have to understand the old stuff so well that you can take it apart and then rebuild it into something else. It's not about erasing the past, it's about using its parts as fuel for the future. And that all leads to the book's central, most powerful idea. The goal isn't to be better than Watchmen. The goal is to be good enough to escape its influence. It's about earning the creative freedom to tell your own story, in your own way, without being crushed by the weight of that giant shadow. And at the very end, after all the clever meta-commentary and deep analysis, it all boils down to this one simple, hopeful, and kinda defiant message for the future of the art form. We can do better. And that leaves all of us with a question that goes way beyond just comic books, right? In any creative field, whether it's music or film or technology, how do we pay respect to the masterpieces of the past without becoming their prisoners? How do we learn from the giants who came before us without being trapped forever in their shadows?